the Democrats are hard at work.
Oh, we are hard at work.
That's great. And thinking about how to reach people. And I agree that building the bench is going to be so important. I think everyone is so focused right now on 2018 and trying to flip the House and flip the
Hmm.
Senate, but we really need to be thinking long term about how to help our country moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a 2-year plan, it's a 20-year plan.
All right. Well, here's hoping that our little kids in 20 years will be excited about the strength of the Democratic Party.
Here's to it.
All right. Thanks, Daisy.
Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. This is Kelly. I'm here as usual with my co-host, Sophie. Hey, Sophie.
Hey, Kelly.
And we have with us in this segment Kason Kendall, who is the president of College Democrats of Utah. Hello, Kason.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about who you are, how you got interested in politics, and how you got to the position you're at with College Democrats of Utah.
I'm a senior right now at Weber State University. My major is history and social science teaching, and so I was able to do a few internships at Weber State University with the Walker Institute. And so I did an internship with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and then I did one with the state legislature last legislative session. And that was really my main exposure to politics. Through some of those internships, I was able to meet some really great people that are dedicated and that are involved. And then I got involved with Young Democrats of Utah after my legislative internship.
And so where in Utah is Weber State?
Weber State's in the Ogden area. It's about 50 minutes north of Salt Lake.
That gives us some perspective. And were you a Democrat growing up, or was that a change for you at some point?
I actually wasn't really a Democrat growing up. A lot of people in Utah are pretty conservative, and so I used to hear my dad and uncle and some of his friends talking politics, and a lot of my views kind of went along with theirs. But it was as I was in college and as I was studying psychology and political science and history, and I felt like I started learning more just about social influence and about the political system. I came to realize that a lot of my views had been really shaped by just group influence and by the people around me. And as I started really studying things for myself, my views started leaning a little bit more left.
So you said a lot of people in Utah are conservative. Do you think that's true at the college and university level as well? We often hear about colleges and universities being sort of an influence and making people more liberal, but I don't know if that's equally true in a place that's very conservative.
That's a great question. I think that college students in Utah in general are more left-leaning than the older generations, but compared to college students out of state, I think that Utah probably has more conservative students, especially at universities like BYU. Maybe at the University of Utah, students are more liberal, but at some schools, they're definitely more right-leaning. And there's some where it's probably pretty close to half and half, where there's a lot of liberals and conservatives and moderates.
At a school like yours, a school like Weber State, do you see much of an international student population, or is it mostly students sort of from within the state?
There's some international students. I think that this could be because schools in Utah are more affordable than a lot of areas, but I would guess that the school in Utah with the greatest international student population is University of Utah and potentially BYU.
So let's set the stage here a little bit for what Utah politics looks like. So you have a Republican governor. Both senators, U.S. senators, are Republican, and all 4 congressional representatives are Republican. Is that
that's
the case?
Correct.
And so is that sort of the way things look statewide? Are there pockets of Utah where there are more Democrats?
Yeah, so in Salt Lake, the most urban area of the state, There's a lot of Democrats in that area, and so like the state house, for example, there are 75 members, and I believe there's 13 Democrats, and the majority of them are elected in that Salt Lake region. But due to gerrymandering, Salt Lake doesn't have its own congressional district. All of our representatives nationally are Republican.
And so, can we talk a little bit about the upcoming Senate race? I think this one seems like, from the outside, like it could be really interesting with Orrin Hatch retiring in 2018. Has Romney actually declared that he will run yet?
From my understanding, he's supposed to declare within the next week or so. I read an article that was saying that if he decides to run, he'll declare. But I'm predicting that he's definitely going to run.
Are there any other major Republicans who are running for that seat right now?
Not according to my knowledge. I think most of them figure they wouldn't have a very good chance running against Mitt Romney. And so if he decides not to run, then I'm sure we'll see some people rising up and trying to go for it. But it's looking like he'll run, and none of them are going to challenge him.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Democratic candidate?
And so right now, the leading candidate is looking like there's a good chance it will be Jenny Wilson. She's a Salt Lake councilwoman. There was a guy named Mitch Weiss running. There may have been some others who I haven't gotten to know very well. But Jenny Wilson is who it's looking like will be the Democratic candidate for Senate.
Do you think that there's any chance that a Democrat could win a Senate seat from Utah?
I think with the right conditions, I think it could happen in the future.
And what would the right conditions be?
The right conditions would be if there isn't a strong Republican candidate, and if on the national level you had just a lot of outrage with Republicans. It's interesting. A lot of people in Utah, a lot of Republicans still view Trump favorably, even though that might not be the case in all Republican states. A lot of Utahns view him favorably.
There were a lot of votes for Evan McMullin in Utah, weren't there?
This is just estimations, but I believe there were about 25% of the votes to Evan McMullin, 25-ish for Hillary, and about 50% for Trump.
I'm a little surprised that Evan McMullin's not running for Senate.
Yeah, I read a while back that he accrued a lot of debt in his presidential run. I'm not sure if that has to do with it, but
I had thought also that maybe Jason Chaffetz would run.
He's probably looking for governor in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to do something since he can't look his wife and daughter in the eye anymore since he supported Trump after all. You said that, college students are maybe a little bit more left-leaning than the rest of the state. Do you think that that is the kind of thing that over time could turn the state more blue? Or do you think it's something that people go to college and, become a little more left-leaning, but then go back to their homes and become conservative again?
I think over time, that is the kind of thing that could help flip Utah blue. As the older generations pass on and the younger ones rise up, I could see that's how I could see Utah eventually going blue.
I was surprised when I was doing research for this episode to realize that the majority of people in the state are members of the LDS Church. So, I obviously when we think Utah, we think Mormonism, but turns out it's the only state in the country where the majority of people in that state are members of a single church. So do you think it's still the case that the LDS Church has a lot of influence on how politics go in Utah?
Yeah, absolutely.
And are a lot of young people still staying with the church, or is it similar to what we're seeing in a lot of other religions that the young people are leaving the religious traditions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that in Utah with Mormonism, you're seeing trends that reflect the national averages. I think that in general, young people in Utah are less religious than their parents. The church has a strong hold in Utah, and I mean it will be around for for definitely a long time, but younger people in Utah in general are less religious than older generations.
So, what does your work with college Democrats and young Democrats look like? Is there a very active participation? Are you seeing any growth in the numbers?
So this is my first year, and it will be my only year as the College Dems chair, College Dems president. I started with the position in April of 2017, and then I'll be graduating this spring, and then so we'll pass on to someone else. But a lot of our activity has been trying to hold events on campuses, trying to increase voter registration, trying to go out and knock doors and help candidates for city council. This year they'll be doing more for candidates that are running for the state house or the state senate. But we've just been trying to increase political participation among college students in the state.
And do you feel like that has been received well?
I don't have a lot to compare it to, but I feel like we have some great university presidents that are really dedicated, and I feel like they've been doing their best with it, and they've been increasing the membership numbers in the College Democrats chapter at each university.
What kind of issues do college-age Democrats or college-age students in general in Utah seem to really be concerned with right now?
It's different for everyone. Some college Democrats, for example, are very concerned with social issues, with issues concerning the LGBTQ population. Some people are really concerned with economic issues, with wealth inequality, with money in politics. They want campaign finance reform, and so it might be a little bit different for everyone. But there's overall arching things that I feel unite a lot of young progressive people.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that Salt Lake has such a large LGBTQ population.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, it's something sort of from the outside, just sort of looking at Utah, you just think of Utah as such a conservative place and especially a religiously conservative place, that it seems surprising that that population would sort of all flock to that area.
Yeah. Salt Lake is a really friendly city for the LGBTQ population. We have Senator Jim DeBacchus is a great guy, and he's the state senator representing an area in Salt Lake. We have Mayor Jackie Biskupski, who's the mayor in that area, and so it's a pretty good place.
Maybe the last question or point that I have, and you may not know the answers to this, but I know that tourism is one of the sort of major factors in Utah economy, and there's all these reports out that the U.S. is not a tourism destination as much as it had been, possibly because of Trump. Do you know if that's true at all within Utah?
I mean, it's hard to know for certain. I'm not familiar with specific reports that may indicate that. But I mean, Utah's definitely a popular place to come and ski, and I don't think that's, if anything has changed that this year, it would be the lack of snow.
I was wondering if you guys want to talk about the 4th District race at all. I thought it was an interesting race. Mia Love is running for re-election, and her opponent is apparently pretty well liked, a Democrat, and she seems to be falling a little bit in the polls. And so I know some national Democratic strategists have flagged that race as one where Democrats might be able to win in 2018. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So Mayor Ben McAdams is pretty well liked in Utah. He did his undergraduate at the University of Utah, went to Columbia Law. He was a state senator for a time. He's a Salt Lake County mayor now. And from my understanding, he gets a lot of support compared to a lot of Democrats from Republicans. A lot of Republicans view him as pragmatic and someone who's willing to compromise and work across the aisle. And so he's pretty popular across the state. And so with Ben McAdams, there's a Democrat that has a good chance of winning a big election in Utah. It's him.
Cool. And how would you describe, I know you said that Republicans are fairly fond of him. Would you say that he's like a more conservative Democrat? Why do you think Republicans are so fond of him and think that he works across the aisle?
I think he's progressive, but